Hello everyone, welcome to PeopleSoft channel. My name is Samir, and in today's episode of PeopleSoft interview series, we are going to discuss interview questions about pages in PeopleSoft. Along with their answers, we will also discuss the possible follow-up questions and we will go through quick tutorials to understand the concepts. So, without further delay, let us start the discussion. First question is, what is standard page, secondary page, and subpage in PeopleSoft system? So standard page is the default type of page in PeopleSoft system. This page is displayed and available to the user at runtime when a user enters into a PeopleSoft component. So here we can see this is an employee component. So when we enter into this component, we can see that there are four pages available to us: employee, projects, address, and salary. So these pages are available and displayed at runtime. So these are called as standard pages in PeopleSoft system. The second type of page is called as secondary page, and these pages are not available at runtime similar to standard page. If we need to open a secondary page, then we need to access that secondary page through a standard page with the help of a hyperlink or a push button. Let us see one example. We have this employee page, which is a standard page. On this page, we have this hyperlink called More Info, and when we click on it, we can see that one more page is available. This is the secondary page which stores the additional information with respect to a transaction. Secondary pages are used when we have a lot of information with respect to a transaction. So obviously we cannot display so much of information, otherwise the length of the page will be a lot. In that case, we segregate the non-essential or the additional information and we separate that from a standard page. In this case, we put the less important or additional information on a secondary page like this, and we link this secondary page to a standard page by using a push button or a hyperlink. Now, the third type is called subpage. So suppose we created a small section of page consisting of, let's say, 3 to 4 fields, and if we need to use that small section of page at multiple places, then one way is to you drag and drop these 3 to 4 fields each time on a particular page. But we have one more efficient approach, that instead of dragging and dropping these fields each time, we can create a sub page for the required fields, and whenever we have the requirement of those fields on a page, we will use the sub page with those particular fields. So this is an efficient approach for application development. Let us see one example. So if we see on the projects page, we have created this sub page consisting of three fields: total experience, management experience, and on-site experience. Now we can see that the same section of fields has been used on the salary page as well. So this was done by creating a sub page out of these three fields. As we can see in the application designer, this is the sub page that we have created by using these three fields, and the same sub page is used on the salary page and the projects page. We can see this is the salary page and we have used this sub page here, and similarly on the projects page we have used the same sub page. A follow-up question is, what is the difference between a standard page and a secondary page? So the first difference is that standard page is visible to the user at runtime, as we saw with respect to an employee component. On the other hand, a secondary page will not be available to the user at runtime. The user will need to access the page, the secondary page, through a standard page. Second difference is that standard page is a standalone page and it can be directly accessed from any menu in PeopleSoft system. On the other hand, secondary page is not a standalone page, so it must be accessed through a standard page, and we cannot access a secondary page directly through a menu in PeopleSoft. Third difference is that these pages have different use cases. For example, standard page is used to display or input some information, the important information from the user. On the other hand, secondary pages are generally used to display additional information or to display non-essential fields, or in most cases, it is used to display the read-only fields for additional information with respect to a transaction. And the last difference is that standard page contains the component action buttons such as the save action or the return to search action. On the other hand, secondary pages do not have this component action buttons. They only have OK and cancel or return button. So we can verify this point. As we can see, employee is a standard page. So we do have this save action, return to search action button. These are the component action buttons. On the other hand, when we go to the secondary page, we can see that we do not have those component action buttons on a secondary page. So if we need to save a transaction, then we cannot do it directly from the secondary page. For that, we need to return to the standard page, and only then we can save the transaction. Another follow-up question is, what setup would you do to navigate from a standard page to a secondary page? Or in other words, how would you link a secondary page to a standard page? So let's say that we have to create this link, that once we click on this link, a secondary page needs to be open. So this can be done by using two ways. One is by using a hyperlink or a push button like this, and another one is through a people code. Let us see example for both of them. In the first method, we will use a push button or a hyperlink. So on the employee page, let us insert a push button hyperlink. Let us set the properties for this push button. So we will convert this into a hyperlink. Then on the destination, we need to mention its destination as a secondary page, because we need to link a secondary page to the standard page. For this hyperlink, we need to assign a record field. So we have created a work record, and we will assign a field from this work record to this hyperlink in order to work it. So the work record name is employee work, and from this work record we will select a field. So this is the field. Now since we are linking a secondary page, we need to mention the name of the secondary page here. So let's mention the secondary page name, and let's assign some label for this hyperlink. Alright, so we have given these details. Now let us see if the secondary page has been linked correctly with our standard page. We have created a hyperlink and we have given the link text as the additional details. Now let us test the employee page. As we can see, the link which we created, additional details, is available here, and once we click on this, we can navigate successfully to the secondary page. So this is the first way of navigating to the secondary page. Another way of navigating to a secondary page is by using the people code command. So let us see one example where we will create a push button on this page, and once we click on that push button, we will navigate to the secondary page. So let us insert a push button for this employee page. Let us set the properties for this push button. So now in the destination, we will keep the destination as the people code command, as we need to access the secondary page through a people code command. We will assign a field for this push button. Let's assign some label. All right, now let's write the people code in order to access the secondary page. For that, we will write the code at the component record field level, and we will use the toModel function in order to load the secondary page. Now let's test the effect of this people code. So once we enter the employee page, we can see that now we have this button available. And once we click on this button, we can successfully navigate to the secondary page. So this is the second way to access the secondary page through a primary page using a people code. Another follow-up question is that can we use a sub page on a secondary page? So the answer is yes, we can use a sub page on a secondary page similar to how we use a sub page on a primary page. This is the same sub page that we have already used on a primary page like projects and salary. However, the converse is not true. That means we cannot use a secondary page on a sub page. Next question is explain the concept of page levels in PeopleSoft system. So PeopleSoft systems allows us to create level-based page design when we have to represent a single complex transaction in which the data is coming from different records. Let us see one example. Suppose we have a requirement that we need to create a page to represent this item transaction, and this is the structure of the transaction. This is a tree-like structure, and we can see that one item can have one or more suppliers, and then the particular suppliers can have one or more location setup present. So this is a tree-like structure, and in order to represent this entire transaction on a single page, we need to have different levels so that we can accommodate the data coming from different records into a particular level. For example, the item data can be coming from master item table. The supplier data can be coming from item supplier table. Similarly, location data can be coming from item supplier location table. So the first thing we will do is we will divide this transaction into multiple levels. Let us say item at level 0, the first level, supplier at level 1, the second level, and the location information at level 2, the third level. Now we will represent this information by creating three levels on a PeopleSoft page. So this is the delivered page which has been created to represent the item transaction. As we discussed, we can see that we have some information present at this level. So this will be a level 0 information which will correspond to this item at level 0. Next, at level 1, we are storing the supplier information. So we can see that we have created a scroll area to store the item supplier details, and we have three supplier available for this item. We can navigate through this supplier with the help of these arrows. So this item supplier record or this item supplier scroll will be present at level 1. Similarly, for each supplier, we also have to store the location details. Hence, we have created one more scroll at level 2, which will store the location details for each supplier. So we have three suppliers here, and for each of this supplier, we have their corresponding supplier attributes to store the location information. Hence, this supplier attributes will be at level 2. So with the help of three levels, we have successfully displayed the entire transaction for this item. We can check the page structure in the application designer. This is the page, and if we check in the order tab, we can see that the initial item information is represented at level 0. Then the item supplier information, which is mostly coming from item vendor table, it's stored at level 1. And finally, the supplier attributes or the location information is displayed at level 2. A follow-up question is, how many maximum levels are allowed in a PeopleSoft page? So PeopleSoft system allows maximum of 4 levels, that is from level 0 to level 3. And beyond that, we cannot create further levels. Another follow-up question is that can we have a scroll or a grid at level 0? So the answer is no, we cannot have scroll or grid at level 0 because the purpose of level 0 is to represent a single transaction, and the purpose of scroll and grid is to represent a combination of one or more rows related to a parent transaction. And this is the reason that we can use scroll and grid from level 1 up to level 3, but we cannot use scroll or grid at level 0. Another follow-up question is that can we have multiple scroll or grid at the same level on the same page in PeopleSoft? So the answer is yes, we can have multiple scrolls or grid at the same level. For example, if we check the projects page, then we can see that we are having two different scroll areas at the same level, which is level 1. So this one is storing the projects information and this one is storing the miscellaneous information. We can confirm the same in the page design in application designer. So if we go to orders tab, then we can see that we are having the scroll area at level 1. Similarly, we are having the second scroll area also at level 1. Next question is, what is parent-child relationship between records on PeopleSoft pages? So parent-child relationship means the one-to-many relationship between the two records in which the transaction in the first record can have one or many related transaction in the second records. So let us understand these concepts with the help of an example. So this is the example which we discussed in the previous question, and from the structure we can see that one item can have one or more suppliers. So item information is coming from a different table. Similarly, supplier information is coming from a different table. However, the item transaction in the first table is linked to one or more supplier transactions in the second table. So this one-to-many relationship between item and suppliers is called as the parent-child relationship, in which the first table, the item master table, acts as a parent table or parent record, and the second record, which is the item supplier information table, acts as a child record. Similarly, if we see the relationship between item supplier table and the item supplier location table, then we can understand from the structure that one supplier can have one or more location attributes. Hence, here also the parent-child relationship is present between a supplier and its location, where the supplier record acts as a parent table and the supplier location record acts as a child table. Parent-child relationship is often created to optimize the structure of the data, and it is often used when we need to represent the data in a hierarchical manner. A follow-up question is how to create a parent-child relationship between two records in PeopleSoft. So in order to create a parent-child relationship between a parent table and child table, we need to have a valid key structure for both the records. For example, let us say we have this parent table and this child table, and we need to create a parent-child relationship between these two records where a parent transaction can have one or more transactions in the child record. In order to achieve this, we must create a key structure in the parent table. Once created, we must have the exact same key structure in the child table. For example, in the parent table, if we have employee ID and employee name as the key structure, then in the child table, we must have these two fields, employee ID and employee name, and we must make them as a key, hence replicating the same key structure from the parent table. And in addition to this key structure, we should have one more key structure for the child table itself. For example, we will have employee ID and employee name as a key structure in the parent table. We will have both the fields in the child table, and those fields will be key structure. Similarly, we will have the designation as a key structure for the child table. So all the key from the parent table plus one additional key for the child tables. Once we have this setup, then these two tables become eligible to form a parent-child relationship. Now, with the help of a scroll area or a grid, we can create and represent the relation parent-child relationship on a PeopleSoft page. For example, if we check the projects page, then we can see that we have created a parent-child relationship between the employee record present at level 0 and the projects record present at the scroll area in level 1. So this is a one-to-many relationship in which one employee is allocated to three different projects. So let us see the table structure for these two records. So this is the employee table in which we have given the employee ID as the key field. So in the child record, we have the same employee ID as the key field, similar to how we have in the parent table. And in addition to this key structure, we also have one more field as a key structure for the corresponding child table. So as per the key structure, this record is now eligible to form a parent-child relationship. Finally, we need to go to record properties, and in the use tab, in the record relationships for the child record, we need to provide the name of the parent record in the parent record field. And once we provided the name, the parent-child relationship has been completed between the employee table and the employee project table. This is how we can create a parent-child relationship between two records on a PeopleSoft page. Next question is, explain the concepts of scroll area and grids on a PeopleSoft page. So scroll area and grids are the data control structures which are used on a PeopleSoft page whenever we have to represent a complex transactions involving parent-child relationship. Let us see one example. So this is the projects page in which the parent record is the employee record, and for this employee, multiple projects have been allocated. So this is a parent-child relationship. In order to display this relationship, we have used a square box which is called as the scroll area. So projects is the scroll area, and we can see that we have multiple rows representing multiple transactions associated with the parent record. We can navigate through this multiple transactions with the help of these arrow keys. So scroll area is like a form-like structure in which we can arrange the fields as per our convenience, and we can display one row of data at a given time. Scroll area also provides the functionality of search. For example, if we need to check if a particular transaction exists in this row of data, we can use the find functionality. In this case, we will search for a project with project ID P03, and since this transaction is present, system has displayed the particular transaction. Now, this is one way of representing parent-child relationship in which we can represent one child transaction at a given time. The another way to represent a parent-child relationship is by using a grid structure. So below scroll area, we have this square box which represents a tabular structure or a structure similar to Excel sheet. This structure is called as grid. In the scroll area, we can represent only one transactions at a given time, and we do have a freedom to place the fields as per the requirement. In case of grids, we can represent more than one transactions at a given time, but we do not have the control over how to represent these fields as these are already arranged in a tabular form. For both the structures, scroll area and grid, we have to assign a physical PeopleSoft record so that the scroll area or grid would understand from which record they need to fetch the information and for which record they need to insert the information. For this project scroll, we have the physical record called as employee project table, and for this grid structure, we have the physical table called as employee other table. So these are the basics of scroll area and grid. A follow-up question is, what is the difference between scroll area and grid? Both scroll area and grid can be used to create a parent-child relationship. However, there are some differences between these two structures, such as in scroll area, we can represent only one transactions at a given time. On the other hand, for grid structure, we can represent multiple rows of data at a given time. Second difference is scroll area is like a free form where user can decide the placement of the fields as per the requirement. On the other hand, grid is a tabular structure where the user does not have the much control over the placement of the fields. Third difference is that scroll area allows for further nesting. So inside this project scroll, if you want to put another scroll area or a grid, it is allowed if this scroll area is not at the last level. On the other hand, we cannot put any scroll area or grid inside this grid. These are the differences between scroll area and grid. Another follow-up question is that can we do nesting of scrolls and grids? So the answer is if we want to put a scroll or a grid inside a scroll, we can do that. But if it is a grid data structure, then inside that grid, we cannot add another scroll or a grid. Let us see one example. So this is the supplier contacts page. On this page, we have some key information at level 0. Then we have this supplier contract scroll area at level 1. Inside the scroll area, we have nested another scroll area with the supplier details. This will be at level 2. And inside this supplier details, we have nested another grid, which is the phone information. This will be at level 3. Another follow-up question is that can we have data from more than one record for a given scroll or a grid? So the answer is no, we cannot have more than one physical record associated with a scroll area or grid. While discussing about scrolls, we discussed that we need to assign one physical record for each scroll and a grid. This is because the scroll area needs to understand the physical table through which it has to make a connection to retrieve the data or insert the data. If it is more than one record, then it cannot do the insertion. Hence, only one physical records are allowed to assign for a given scroll area or a grid. However, if the second record which you want to assign to the scroll area is a derived or work record, then in that case we can take the fields from the derived work record and put those fields into the scroll. So this is allowed. However, the record fields from the two different physical records are not allowed to put on a scroll area or grid. Another follow-up question is that can we restrict addition or deletion of data from scroll area and grid? So the answer is yes, we can do that. For example, for this scroll area, we have both the control to add a row of data as well as to delete a row of data. However, in the projects scroll, we can see that we do not have the option to delete a row of data. This is because we have written people code to control deletion of data based upon the designation of this employee. So using people code, we can control the setting. Also, if we need to control the setting from the application designer, we can go to the scroll area properties, and in the use tab of scroll area properties, we have the data options where we can control the data operations. So if we click on no row insert, it will not allow us to insert the data. Let us test this option. As we can see, after selecting this option, we can no longer add a new row of data in this transaction. So this is how we can restrict addition or deletion of row of data for a scroll area or a grid. And the last question for today's episode is, how would you test your page using Application Designer? So of course, if we need to test the page that we developed, we can log into PIA, go to the navigation and test the page. But for that, the component must be registered and the page should be added to the component. However, if we need to test the look and feel of this page using Application Designer itself, then we can use the layout option in the Application Designer. So suppose this is the employee project page and we need to test the look and feel for this page. Then we can go to this layout option and we can select the view in browser option by selecting a particular browser. This will give us an idea about the look and feel of how the page will look once you log in into a PIA. Of course, we cannot insert any row of data by using this option, but this will at least give you the idea about the look and feel of the page that you have developed. From this quick glance, you can check if your required fields are being displayed correctly, if their position is correct, or if we need to make any changes with respect to the layout of this page. Another option we can use to test the page is by using the test mode. So in the layout menu, we can click on the test mode, and again this will give you a look and feel of how your page will be displayed at runtime. So once the observation is completed, we can again click on the test mode to exit out of the testing mode. So this is how we can test the look and feel of the page using Application Designer. Alright guys, that's it for today's episode. If you found this content helpful, then please like the video, and if you are interested into more such content, then please subscribe to the channel. Thank you.